Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today I was thinking about it. I'm going to do my top horror movies of the last decade. And it's fun to go back and look through what has come out, and it's amazing how long ago it actually was that some of these movies came out. You think, it seems like it just came out a few years ago. No, it was actually 10 years ago. So it was kind of fun looking back through online what came out 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all the way up to 19. Even though we just had 19, those movies are fresh on our minds, but it was interesting to look back to see what year certain things came out. Now, let's start with 2010. I'm going to list a few movies that came out that year, or maybe more than a few, and then I'm going to pick a runner-up and my top movie, my favorite movie from that year. Might not be yours, but again, this is my list. You can make your own list. It's all good. What you like might not be what I like, so it's all nice. We had Insidious came out that year. The Crazies, the remake of George A. Romero's movie from the 70s. Let Me In, which was an English language remake of Let the Right One In. Stakeland, which was a really cool little independent vampire post-apocalyptic movie. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend that. All these movies I recommend, the ones I do mention. I'm just going to pick my two runner-up and my favorite movie of those. We had the Wolfman remake starring Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins and Emily Blunt. And we had John Carpenter's last film that he's ever made so far. Hopefully the man will make another one, but I don't know. As time goes on, I'm getting less and less hopeful on that. Now, I like all these movies in some way. Some of them are better than others, but my favorite ones of the year, my runner-up would be Let Me In, which is a really good vampire movie. Like I said, I've never seen the other version, the original version. I've only ever seen this version. A lot of people tell me the original version is really good. I haven't seen it, so can't go off that. But I have to say my favorite one is The Crazies of that year. I thought it was a really good remake of George Romero's movie. And they upgrade a lot of things in the story. They change a few things, and I found it very interesting. Timothy Olyphant as the lead is fantastic as this small-town sheriff in Iowa. And I like the angle they took on it. There's nothing else more to say. If you've never seen it, check it out. It's definitely worth your time if you're a horror fan. 2011 gave us the fourth chapter in the Scream franchise, which I really do like the fourth one. I think it's way better than the third one. The Thing prequel, which nobody really asked for, but I do enjoy that movie. They made some major mistakes with it. Too much CGI for the creature. And I think, and after I walked out of it, I'm like, I didn't mind the story. I didn't mind the characters, really. There's some problems with the plot and the story, but I didn't mind it. I had fun, except for thinking back on John Carpenter's original The Thing. Rob Bottin's effects back in 82 look way better than the effects in this movie in 2011. I'm like, the over-reliance on CGI just kills some of these movies. It's like, stop it. Use practical effects. I can go on about that all day. We also had the Fright Night remake, which I do enjoy. Do I think it's better than the original? No, but it's definitely an enjoyable vampire movie. And they do change enough stuff up to make it fun. You're Next is another movie that came out that year. I can't believe it was 2011. It feels, I was living in Massachusetts at the time, but it doesn't feel like it's been out that long. But yes, 2011, You're Next came out. And the last one that I'm going to mention for that year is Cabin in the Woods. I would say my runner-up is Cabin in the Woods. I like that movie, although I will say, as a little comment, that when I first saw it, I liked it a lot. Ever since then, when I revisit it, I don't like it as much anymore as I used to. It's still good enough to be my runner-up, but there's some things that bother me, and I'll do a review on it eventually, a full review, but I just don't think it's as good as I once thought it was, which, you know, over time you change your mind on things, and there's movies I hated when I was younger that I love now. It's just, it's all perspective. But my number one movie that year, I would say, was You're Next. I really like that movie. It gives us an awesome final girl in that movie, and I just like the story and the characters, and it was a cool little low budget thriller that actually made a nice buck in the theaters when it came out. 2012 gave us Sinister, which I like a lot, starring Ethan Hawke. American Mary, starring Catherine Isabella. That's a Canadian movie, but it's a really, really good movie. It has to do mostly with body modifications and stuff. It's actually really well done. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's definitely worth your time. The Collection, the sequel to The Collector, which I like The Collector and I like The Collections, and I know we're finally getting the third one this year, I think. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Even though I thought that title is insane, I know it's based on a graphic novel, I actually liked the movie. Is it perfect? Oh no. But it's a fun time. And Prometheus we got that year. My runner-up would be American Mary. Catherine Isabella gives a great performance. It's a messed up little horror film. It's not afraid to get bloody. I highly recommend checking it out. It's definitely worth a watch. You may not like it as much as me, but you'll definitely think that was definitely an interesting horror film. That's all I got to say about that. And then my number one is Prometheus. It was just good to have Ridley Scott playing in the Alien universe again. Even though we didn't get any xenomorphs per se, we got creatures, just not the xenomorph as we know it. I thought they did enough different stuff with it. It was very interesting. I liked it a lot. It was well acted. It's beautifully shot, and I like Prometheus a lot. On to 2013, and I can't believe The Conjuring came out in 2013. It doesn't feel like it's that old. The Conjuring came out that year. James Wan's take on Ed and Lorraine Warren's files, based on a case that's out of Rhode Island. Funny enough, when I lived in Massachusetts, I wasn't too far from this town where this took place, but. Yeah, Conjuring came out in 2013, and the Evil Dead remake came out in 2013, directed by Fede Alvarez, with Sam Raimi, Rob Tabbert, Bruce Campbell producing, and I was surprised how much I loved that remake, because I love the original trilogy, but the remake is really well done. You can't take that away from them. We also got a movie called The Sacrament in 2013, which is kind of loosely based off of a real story. I won't get into it here. I'll do a full review on this movie eventually. I really like this movie, though. If you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. But then also we got Wolf Creek 2. I liked the first Wolf Creek, and I enjoyed the sequel. So that's on there as well as, how to mention it. My runner-up, though, that year would be the Evil Dead remake, for sure. I really like that movie. And I think I don't know, maybe they'll give us a sequel to that movie. I don't know. I know everybody wants a movie with Bruce Campbell. That'd be awesome. But Bruce Campbell says he's done playing Ash, so I don't think that's going to happen. My number one horror film that year, though, would be The Conjuring. James Wan gave us a really effective ghost story, possession movie. There's not much more to say about it. I really do like that first film. I like the second one, too, but the first film, I think, is the better one out of the two. Yeah, it's just a really good movie. On to 2014. Now, looking through the list, it was a late list for 2014, and I was thinking to myself, am I missing something? But I looked at the whole list, and these are the only two I can come up with, which is fine because they're two movies I really like. My runner-up would be Late Phases. I mentioned this in one of my previous reviews. It's basically a story about a retirement community, and the residents of the community are being stalked by a werewolf and killed. And it's really well done. The werewolf design is pretty cool, although sometimes the effects, the camera lingers a little too long on the werewolf. It's a low-budget movie. And when it does linger too long on the werewolf, it doesn't look that great. If you only see it in pieces, it looks really good. But the more the camera lingers on it, it loses its luster. Let's put it that way. But my number one that year would be It Follows. I really like that movie. It's well shot, well acted. I like the story. It's a different twist on things. I just think it's really well done, and it's my number one from 2014. 2015, we had Krampus, which is like Gremlins meets, I don't know, Home Alone, maybe, if I had to describe it. If you haven't seen it, I did a review on it back in December. If you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. It's a cool little PG-13 creature feature, and it's definitely worth your time. The other movie that came out that year that gave us my first introduction to Craig S. Zahler, which he has had a couple more movies since then, which I highly recommend, Brawl on Cell Block 99 with Vince Vaughn. If you've never seen that, check it out. It is awesome. But that year he gave us Bone Tomahawk starring Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell's in that movie. Patrick Wilson's in that movie. And a bunch of other people you'd recognize. Sid Haig's in that movie. David Arquette's in that movie. But it's a Western horror movie. And the last 30 minutes is batshit and insane horror action. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a little long, but it's really, really well done. The other movie that came out that year that I really liked was Green Room. If you've never seen that, it's about this punk rock band that ends up playing this gig out in the middle of nowhere at this. They don't know it at first, but this neo-Nazi bar. Shit goes awry. People start getting killed, and we have a horror movie, friends. But My runner-up that year would be Krampus. I really like that film. But my number one has to be Bone Tomahawk. That movie blew me away when I saw it. Yes, it's long and it takes its time, which is pretty much what Craig S. Soller does in all of his films. But it's just all it's great. Love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. All right, 2016 was also a little bit of a light year. But two movies that I found on that list I really, really like. And my runner-up is Hush, Mike Flanagan's Netflix movie. If you've never seen it, if you have a Netflix subscription, check it out. It's on there. Sorry. I'm having a hard time talking. I'm hopped up on caffeine, so I'm talking a mile a minute here. Yeah, if it's on there, check it out. It's really well done, and it's a cool little horror flick. So check that out. My number one movie that year, though, is Fede Alvarez's follow-up to the Evil Dead remake, and that movie is Don't Breathe. It's a really good horror film. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I don't want to give anything away, but it's really good. 2017. Now, this year, if you look back at that year and see some movies on there that were really popular in the horror category, you're going to think my list is insane. But, yes, I have seen some of those bigger movies from that year. They didn't click with me. I don't like them. I know it's a shock. Some people didn't like certain movies. But there's a few big movies that came out that year I didn't care for. For whatever reason, it didn't click with me. And these movies I'm going to mention, I like better. So that's just the way it is. We had Alien Covenant come out that year. Ridley Scott returned to the Alien franchise. And now this time we got Xenomorphs. And they do run amok. Yes, it's gory as hell. It's beautifully shot, well acted. Although I don't find it as compelling as Prometheus. But it's still a fun time at the movies to have Ridley Scott back behind the camera on an Alien film. So Alien Covenant came out that year. Annabelle Creation. Now, Annabelle, the first one, there's some parts that are effective, but overall it's not a very good movie. I can watch it and have fun with it, but it's not very good. This is one of those few times, especially in the horror realm of cinema, where the sequel is way better than the original. And this one is way better and very effective, very well shot. David F. Sandberg, who went on to do Shazam, did a fantastic job with this sequel, and I really liked it. But that would be my runner-up for that year, 2017. But my number one movie that year was a big movie, but it's probably not the big movie you're thinking if you look at that list. My favorite horror movie that year was It Chapter 1. I grew up with the miniseries. I was 11 years old when the miniseries came out. Tim Curry scared the crap out of me as Pennywise, and I've watched it pretty much almost every Halloween since then. They usually run it on TV, or I catch it on DVD or whatever. But this was a fantastic reimagining of It. I've never read the book, and I know my buddy Lenny Wanzer, who I recommend you go over to his channel, I know he loves Stephen King's books, and I know he loves It. But I know he loves the first It Chapter 1. I know he loves It Chapter 2 as well. But yeah, It Chapter 1 is my favorite horror movie of 2017. I can't believe it's been that long already, but we already had It Chapter 2 this past year, so what the hell. 2018 was a pretty good year. We had the return of Michael Myers, which took a while after Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. There was a couple starts and stops with the Halloween franchise. After Rob Zombie left, he wasn't going to come back for a third one. Matter of fact, he thought, I ended it, now you could reboot it again. I don't think he ever thought they were going to make a sequel to H2. Well, here they were thinking about making a sequel to H2. They brought in the writer and director from My Bloody Valentine 3D, and they were going to make Halloween 3D, which, thank God they didn't do it. They were in pre-production, and they pulled the plug on it, which I'm glad. I do not need to see Michael Myers in 3D. 3D is overused, and it doesn't add anything. It's cool to see some things pop out at you, but after 2 or 3 movies, it's a waste of money, and it's a waste of my time watching it in 3D. I can care less. But I'm glad that never happened. I'm glad we got this version, which is a direct sequel to the original, which brought Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode. I really like it. It's a really effective Halloween movie, and we're lucky we got one so good. So Halloween came out that year. We also got Overlord, which is awesome. I love Overlord. It came out after Halloween, came out November, like the first Friday or second Friday in November. I saw it in the theaters. It's set during World War II. If you haven't seen Overlord, check it out. It's great. But we had some other really good horror films that year, one of which was Upgrade. And if you've never seen Upgrade, I highly, highly recommend that movie. Now, you might say when you watch it, it's more sci-fi, almost like RoboCop or Total Recall kind of movie, not straight up horror. I would agree with you, but it's listed under horror. Let's keep it there. Let's have some really, really awesome horror movies in our corner. Okay, so we'll keep Upgrade there. The other movie, which I saw that summer, and I love this movie. Loved it the first time I saw it. I've watched it probably 6 or 7 times since then. The Summer of '84. I don't know if this is on Netflix right now. It might be. It's streaming somewhere. You can find it. If you've never seen Summer of '84, you got to check it out. This movie is fantastic. It didn't get really. It got a small theatrical release. It kind of went right to digital on demand, but it's awesome. I love this movie. And the one complaint I saw online was it's too much like Stranger Things. While I will agree, there's a lot of similarities. It's set during the '80s, and it's a bunch of young. In this movie, it's like they're 12 and 13 years old, maybe 14. But it's not. There's no sci-fi in this movie. It's a straight up, coming of age horror movie. There's no sci-fi here like Stranger Things. But I would say you could say it's kind of like Disturbia meets Stranger Things. I would agree with that. But it's a really good movie about these kids on summer break. There's this serial killer on the loose in this small town or the small town area, and the cops have no leads. They don't know who it is, and these kids get suspicious of a neighbor, and they start investigating and following this neighbor around. And I'm not going to spoil anything. I will do a full review on this movie eventually. I absolutely love this movie. And it's a shame it doesn't get talked about more. But if you've never seen it, check out the Summer of '84. Matter of fact, Summer of '84 is my follow-up of that year. I love this movie. But unfortunately, I don't love it as much as I love Upgrade. Upgrade is my number one movie from that year, 2018. Upgrade's awesome. If you haven't seen it, check it out. All these movies I just listed. But Overlord, Summer of '84, Upgrade. I know most of you have seen Halloween 18, so I don't got to say anything about that one. Now, 2019 is pretty easy to figure out. I just released my top 5 horror movies, and my runner-up was Ready or Not, and my number 1 is Doctor Sleep. It's pretty simple. I don't really need to go into too much on those. I just did a listing of those. And I have a review of Doctor Sleep on my channel. Just look down. I did a review right out of the theater, and I did a longer review afterwards. But yeah, looking back on the decade actually was really fun, looking back to see what was released, what I really liked. I'm not going to make a list of what I didn't like. It's more fun just to do the stuff I did like in those years. But yeah, there's some really good things in there. If you haven't seen any of these movies, I highly recommend checking them out. You can find them anywhere. Some of them are Netflix, some of them are Amazon Prime. You can find them. It's not hard anymore. It's easier than ever. You don't have to go to a video store and try to track it down. But yeah, that's it for me. My top favorite horror movies of the last decade. It was cool looking back, and thanks for tuning in. I'll be back soon. Thanks. Bye.